3, 2, 1.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. First drag will get you. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back. My name's Dirk Delirium. That's where you'll find me on Facebook or Delirium Dirk. I'm under both. And this is our YouTube channel, Scared Sober Delirium Tremens. And what we're doing here, most of you know, we're doing a segment on the 12 steps. Now, let me make it perfectly clear. I am not the voice or figurehead for a program such as AA or NA or HA or CA or NEA. I don't give a shit. The important thing is that you guys pick a program that works for you, if in fact you want to quit. If you don't, then this is just mild entertainment for you, and I guess you're probably wasting your time, but that's cool too, because maybe down the road you might find yourself in a position where the difference between using and sobriety are the difference between life and death. And that's just where it got with me. So you can join us here. We do also have an awesome Facebook group. If you go to groups and you search Alcoholics/Addicts Living Recovery, that's my group. We have over 550 members. Please come on. I post there every day along with hundreds of others, and it's a super cool way to, if nothing else, just it inspires me, because I know for a fact that if I do today what I did yesterday, I'm not going to drink today. I'm not going to use today. And it is a 24-hour program. Date today is like, I don't know, whatever, June 10, something like that, June 8. When people say, what's your sobriety date? I say my sobriety date is June 8, 2020. Yeah, that's today. And I've been sober since 5:40 this morning. That's when I woke up. And that's all I have to think about. I'm not worried about a year from now or 5 years from now. I'm simply concerned with what I do today. And what I do today is I work the steps. I'm blessed with the fact that I sponsor a lot of people. Some of those people sponsor people, and it's just it's a neat thing. And until you get involved in that and understand it, I won't go into any more detail, but it is amazing. And it's what keeps me sober today. It's what keeps me from using. Keeps me from being right under here 6 feet in this mausoleum, and I don't want to be there today. So we've already gone over step 1 and step 2, and again, it doesn't matter what book or format you follow the 12 steps. They're all generally the same, with some different verbiage. That's it. But the bottom line is that we put some work into it. And I said again, there's a lot of sponsors that I've worked with, and they've said, okay, for 1, 2, and 3, you're powerless over your addiction, and your life's unmanageable, and you came to believe something bigger than you can restore you to sanity, and now you're going to turn your will and your life over to the care of whatever that God is, and you're good. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you're on to step 4. I'm like, what the fuck? I didn't do any work in 1, 2, and 3. So this time around, and again, after being in and out of the program for decades, 3 decades and change, I finally done what really worked. So I'm going to just flip to the book that I particularly choose to follow. There's no right or wrong answer. Again, you're not going to get an A on the test. It doesn't matter to me. But the program that I follow has a little chapter called How It Works, and that's where it lists the 12 steps. The third step that we're going to talk about today is that I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him. I don't care what your conception of God is. I really don't give a shit. It's not my business, nor is your business mine. But what I do know is this, and I was told a long time ago, as long as I know that I'm not God and there's something bigger than me, and I'm willing to believe that, that's all I need. And thus far it worked. In the beginning for me, my God of my understanding was a group of drunks and a group of addicts, and those are the people that I meet with on a daily basis. And if thousands and millions of other people can do it, then why can't I? So this is step 3, and again, don't be afraid of the steps, and this is simply my interpretation of step 3 as my sponsor gave it to me. So no matter what your sponsor suggests, I suggest you follow it. This is just what worked for me. So with step 3, I was asked the following 10 questions. Like I said, I became willing to turn my will and my life over to the care of something bigger than me as I understand it. So the questions are, 1, how has acting on my own self-will affected my life? 2, how has it affected others? 3, how can I take action to turn it over? What is that? 4, what is the difference between my will and the God of my understanding's will? What is the difference between that? 5, how is my higher power working in my life? 6, is my current higher power concept working for my need to change? Because it's all about change. If I don't change, I'm right where I started, and that's nowhere. It's just one step closer to death. 7, what does to the care of mean by me, to me? I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of my conception of God. What does that mean to me? How might my life be changed if I make that decision to turn it over? That's 8. 9, am I unwilling to do things in my recovery that are suggested by my sponsor? And if so, why? And then last, what does, or rather, how does surrender in the first step relate to or help the third step? Now remember, we didn't say the word surrender in step 1. It was, I was convinced that I admit that I'm alcoholic and an addict and that my life has become unmanageable. Well, that is admitting surrender without using that word. So we're going to start with the first piece of that for step 3. How is acting on my own self-will affected my life? Self-will is the stubborn or willing adherence to my own decisions or ideas. Being said, my self-will can only be broken into 2 categories. 2 categories for me: desire and ideas. Those are the 2. In the case of desires, it means that I act on my own thinking when it seems to benefit my wants and or gives me an advantage, usually in something I deem to be worth having or doing or worth achieving. My ideas are then simply my standard of perfection, what I want, beauty or excellence. A worthy principle, rather, an aim to perfection. When combined, this desire paired with the second piece, idea, paired with idea often result in either an unattainable or imaginary goal, one I cannot reach. So, when acting on, there's often inevitably disappointment, frustration, or anger that can result. Then, when these results are applied to my life, I'm restless, irritable, and discontented. In other words, I'm pissed off, and I'm angry, and I'm not a pleasant person to be around. And that's just how I am when I'm using. So, number 2 is how has it affected others? When this happens, as it often does, I look for reasons to point my blame, irration, or dissatisfaction at others. This can, but not always is, directed towards the people that are closest to me. For this alcoholic and addict, it is easier to place blame on others than to accept responsibility for myself. But with goals or expectations unattainable, when they're unrealistic, what should I really in fact expect? The result is often that I am a real asshole and difficult to be around. That's exactly what I wrote. These are the steps that I did the very first time. I never lose them. I'm never going to let them go. And this is what I share with my sponsees rather, when I work the steps with them. So then now we're on to number 3. How can I take action to turn it over? This is the very cognitive. This is a very cognitive effect. It takes a lot of thought and is much easier said than done. First and foremost, I have to have faith that this will work, not my will. This is a difficult and touchy area for this alcoholic. Faith is, after all, a firm belief in something for which there's no proof, logical or mental, and on absolute trust or belief in a set of principles or ideas. So without that faith, I am totally fucked. Dead in the water, so to speak. So how is this faith cultured? Very simply for me, there is something there that has worked for millions of people before me. I have proven to myself without a doubt that my way of thinking does not work. Whether or not I am backed into a corner, I simply have to have this faith to believe and be willing to believe that there's something bigger than dirt. There's something bigger than me. A higher power, or God, if you will. And most importantly, I'm not God. And that's what I wrote. And I still believe that today, and have to. So number 4, that moves us on, what is the difference between my will and the God of my understanding's will? Self-will, again, is a willful or stubborn adherence to my own desires or ideas. These desires and ideas may not always parallel the desires and ideas of a perfect being or ultimate correct decision maker, God of my understanding. Some will overlap, sure, but my human desires and ideas will simply fall into a category of either self-gain or self-gratification. This is often at the expense of others. So I must check my self-will and take a close look at my motives prior to acting impulsively. This is a beginning, at the very least, to my decision or action in turning it over to something greater than me. It's a beginning. At this point, I may be objective and have a better understanding of what my God of my understanding's will may be versus my will at that moment of decision. Number 5, that will be, how is my higher power working in my life? As it says in William James' Varieties of Spiritual Experiences, these profound psychic changes come to some very suddenly, almost radically in some circumstances, such as what happened with the writer of this book, the author. With others still, like me, the change happens slowly, over a period of time and gradually. In my case, it's the second of the two. It can best be described as placing value in and practicing spiritual values and principles in everyday decisions and actions. This requires paying attention to ideas relating to what is traditionally believed to be the vital principle or animating force within living beings that dictates the right or correct course of action. In other words, what we know or deem as right and wrong. By simply being aware of the above is a clear-cut example of my higher power at work in my life today. Just that awareness. Does it always mean that I make the right decision or take the right course of action? No, of course not. But being aware makes it more probable, at least for this alcoholic addict. It makes it more probable that I will take the right course of action, and the fact that my obsession to drink and use has been lifted is a spiritual experience in and of itself. I never knew what that was until I worked these steps, and it is gone. I have no more desire to go and pick up or shoot something in my arm or smoke crack than I have a desire to go stand in front of a car. I do not, because both of them are going to kill me. And that is a spiritual experience to this alcoholic and addict. All right, so question 6. Is my current higher power concept working for my need to change? Yes, absolutely. My current concept of my higher power is sufficient in not only recognizing my need to change, but being possible to take the actions to make those changes. Again, this process for me is gradual and probably something I will work on for the rest of my life. Hence, progress, not perfection. I do not like the phrase, do the next right thing. I don't like that phrase at all, because to me that implies my will. I'm going to do the next right thing. I prefer rather to think of it as do the next thing right, which is my God's way. My way in thinking has, and I capitalized, always fucked everything up. My will has always fucked everything up. So I choose to turn it over and try it another way. And that's the God of my understanding, my higher power, no matter what that is. Number 7, what does to the care of mean to me? What does to the care of mean to me? To the care of means entrusting to a God conscious, if you will. This is or can be having a knowledge of, awareness, feeling or understanding, or in a God of my understanding, even when there's no logical or absolute proof from a scientific standpoint. There's no proof of a God any more than there's proof that a recovery program will work, but it does. It's a psychic change, and it's a spiritual experience. And again, if nothing more than my desire to drink being lifted, I can grab onto that and run with it for the rest of my life. I'm cool. This is a loyalty, faith, or trustworthiness of an idea or power which is much greater than simply I alone. It's bigger than Dirk. This is developed through a belief that my higher power alone can be depended on to provide my answers. My higher power is bigger than me. There is a God, and I'm clearly not it. Being said, I'm willing to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him, because my own actions have proven that my core or way of doing things was not working. It was not working at all. And that's what beat me into the program. Okay, questions 8 and 9 I combined, and that is, how might my life be changed if I make the decision to turn it over? And am I willing to do things in my recovery that are being suggested, and if so, why? So, how might my life be changed? Am I unwilling to take some of these suggestions? No, absolutely not. I agreed that I would be, in the beginning, when I said I'm going to take these 12 steps, I agreed that I would be willing, as it states in my book, to believe in a power greater than myself, to believe I'm not God, to believe there's something bigger than me. I agreed that I would be willing, as it states, to believe this, and that willingness must carry through to any and all suggestions and be at least open to them. If they all do not prove to be a success, so be it. If somebody's suggestion to me doesn't work, so what? At least I know I've taken the time to examine it. But I am at least willing to explore them. So this step requires some rigorous honesty. I have to admit my selfishness. Furthermore, I have to recognize that my self-centeredness has been the root of my troubles ever since birth. Even though I would like to believe others are to be blamed for my problems. I like to point the finger when in fact 4 fingers are pointing back at me. This is not so. When I am fearless and thorough and look closely, I see that my problems usually started with me. It's far more than just removing the alcohol from the equation. I have to admit and abandon my selfish ways. It's the selfishness that will kill me, and it's that damn serious for this alcoholic and addict. It's life or death. This selfishness is what has always led to my relapses. Since I can't rely on myself to be rid of this self-centeredness, I must believe in a higher power to help do that for me. My God, higher power as I understand Him, can deliver me from my own self-centeredness. The book that I read suggests prayer for this. I personally prefer the 3rd step prayer as it was written. So I turn my life over to the care of God, however I best express that. And for me, it helps me to know that I'm not submitting myself to an uncaring, indifferent, spiteful God. That was the God I was raised in. I'm going to go to hell because I'm a fuck up. And that's just not true. It's just not true. Rather, I am surrendering my will and my life to the care of a loving God, a God that wants what's best for me, a God who can run things smoother than I did, despite my delusion otherwise. And I fully believe that. And I had to be willing to believe that in order to take these simple 12 steps. The last question is, how does surrender in the first step relate to or help step 3? The first step does not state surrender, but rather implies it with the word powerless. In fact, the word surrender never even appears in the first 294 pages of this book, not once. The word powerless itself means defenseless, ineffective, or without power, lacking in strength, power, or authority. In my case, all these apply to alcohol and drugs when applied to my life. As so stated in step 1, where I admit that I'm powerless over alcohol and drugs, surrender, on the other hand, means simply to give over oneself or resign oneself to something. The synonym here can be surmised as I've resigned as I am powerless. By being powerless, defenseless, ineffective, or powerless over alcohol, I have to resign myself to a belief that only a higher power, which is again a God of my understanding, everybody's can be different, it doesn't matter, and that can deliver me from this powerlessness that alcohol and drugs had in my life. This, I believe, was exactly what one of the authors of this book intended when writing these steps. They are, after all, in a particular order for a reason. So when I state that I am willing to take action, made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of that God as I understand him, I am resigning myself to the belief or faith that this is my solution and, in effect, my way out. And I gotta tell you, as sure as I'm sitting on a tombstone that I should be under, this program has worked for me. It has worked for millions of other people. I am not alone. I had a huge fear of taking these 12 steps because 1, I didn't understand them, 2, no one had ever explained them to me, and 3, it seemed like a shitload of work. And it's not. You take it one step at a time. There's only 12. There's no cliche. You know, how is the elephant eaten? One bite at a time. That's how you go through these steps, and you do it with an experienced sponsor who has taken the steps before. And my sponsor, who supports me in everything I do, every decision I make, whether it's right or wrong, will say, hey, go try it. My belief is that this guy has done something right. And by the way, my sponsor has 47 years free of the bondage of drugs and alcohol. So whatever he's doing, I want it. Okay? So again, we welcome your feedback and your comments. Do not be afraid of the steps. We're going to post step 4 and step 5 next. That is, those are 2 steps that people just, oh my God, I can't do it. It's too big. And people always typically relapse on step 4 for whatever reason. And then I've asked this question, well, how did the first 3 steps go? Well, I just agreed to them. Okay, how long have you been working on step 4? Oh, 6 months, 7 months. Well, that tells me you haven't done a fucking thing. You know you're supposed to, but you haven't done any work. And then you'll do all the work like a night or 2 before it's due. Well, or you're not going to do it at all. You know, that's when we fade away and ghost away. And I know if I fade away from the program, I'm going to go use, and it's not worth the liability. So again, get with a sponsor, work these steps thoroughly. This is simply my rendition of how I did it. And I, as sure as I'm sitting on this tombstone, a living, breathing proof that they work. And I hope somebody can benefit from that. So I welcome that, welcome your feedback. I look forward to doing 4, doing 5, 6, 8, 9, 12, all the way through. We're gonna hammer this out. And if anybody has any questions and they don't want to post them on a public format, simply send your messages and your questions to me privately at Dirk Delirium on Facebook. If somebody's out there, and there have been many of you that need to talk live, simply send your telephone number, the state and city that you're in, to Dirk Delirium on Facebook privately. I will delete that message. Your anonymity is 100% protected. My anonymity I choose to break because I am allowed to. Only he or she is allowed to break that in anonymity in public and in private. So if somebody has a problem with what I'm doing, I got news for you. It's your problem, not mine. Because what we're doing here has proven that it's saving lives. And I'm just honored to be a little piece of that. So I'm just one person in recovery. It's one point of view. It's mine only. If you don't like it, don't watch. Treat it like porn. If you like what you see, I welcome your feedback. And if you don't, just block me. So that being said, I hope you guys have a great afternoon. Enjoy the month of June and expect to see the next steps in the next few days. And we'll take it from there. I appreciate you. God bless. God of your understanding. Don't drink. Don't use. Go to meetings. And by all means, get a sponsor. That's all I got. Thanks so much.